everybody. It's time for the Five Heart Podcast. We're live on YouTube and other channels. And I am joined tonight by Patrick Gerhardt, longtime guy that's been with me for a while. Basketball writer mostly. Reads a lot of philosophy. So if you have questions about philosophy, please feel free to bring them in the chat, because we'd like nothing better than to have a conversation about Kierkegaard or whatever the frickin' guy's name is. Albert Camus, one of my favorite things of all time, and especially if you've ever seen the movie The Seventh Seal, by God, he's your man.
I think it was two football seasons ago, you barred me from any existential philosopher quotes, so I don't think that ban's been lifted yet.
That's true, it hasn't. I just, I think it worked with the way that our football program was going, but after a while it was like, oh God, I can't take any more quotes from death. And if you've never seen The Seventh Seal, I describe The Seventh Seal for everybody, will you please?
Seventh Seal, Ingmar Bergman film, great Swedish director from I think it was late 50s, I think early 60s, and it's basically about a medieval knight coming back from the Crusades, and the plague is going on, and kind of how he deals with that, along with his merry crew that he meets along the way. And in the end, he kind of redeems himself. So, yeah, very good. I think historically it's not looked upon as one of Ingmar's better films, but it serves purpose historically, and I think that's why it's still revered so well. So, it's one of my favorites.
How are you going to segue from that into our hopes and dreams being crushed by them frickin' Michigan State Spartans?
Well, it was a mixture of, well, the first half was beautiful. You got to admit that. It was a great first half. I was very confident that we were going to just keep going, because Fred, the second half of the season, the team's not struggled terribly in the second half. They just well, but unfortunately we were going up against a team, a Tom Izzo team, who is one of the best college football coach or basketball coaches of all time, let alone the Big Ten. And he is a second half of the season type coach. And luckily for him, he recruits really well. He's got a ton of great players, and they just basically got their heads out of their asses the second half, and Nebraska just decided to go dry for the most part. And it still hurts. That was a tough loss, and mainly because we were ahead. We were ahead at 15 points at one time, and Michigan State just ripped it out. I mean, for all you long-term basketball fans, it's been a while since we've had a team like this, but this is what, hope and success feels like. Okay. And that kind of makes me happy. We have a feeling again about Nebraska basketball. That was the one good thing I looked upon out of Tuesday's loss, is that, it wasn't just like this dull feeling. Like, well, this is kind of how we are this season. We kind of got our hearts ripped out in the second half. And to me, that's a good thing.
Well, David McGee, he used to do photography for me. He said on Twitter it was a gut punch, and I replied to him and said, no, it is not a gut punch. It's just basketball, and this is how we should feel, because we actually feel something. And then I came back later and I said, I thought about it for a while. I thought, yeah, it really is a gut punch. It was, they were riding so high, and it looked to me like they were being, in a lot of those games, they were being carried by energy and emotion more than athletic talent, just sheer athletic talent, especially against other Big Ten teams. And I think they just ran out of that. It just, I think I don't know. Sometimes when you play sports, you just run up against stuff and you just go, oh God, I'm going to get destroyed here. I hope the rest of my teammates can pick this shit up, because the guy I'm playing is beating the fuck out of me, and there's not really much I can do about it, And I just think they all just kind of, not all of them, but, I just seemed to me like they kind of resigned themselves. The offense really just couldn't do anything against Michigan State in the second half. And then you got, they started getting a little desperate and jacking up early shots from Fremont. And I don't know.
Unfortunately, in basketball, when you go dry, you go dry. And that's literally what happened in the second half. Something that we've become used to with Hoiberg teams, but it kind of went away this year. which is nice for once. And, you brought back the bench. I mean, we've been riding our bench since early January with the injuries. So, I mean, after a while, it's kind of like, who's the guy behind you? Well, the guy behind me has been out on the floor 2-3 times already this half and hasn't changed his thing. I mean, honestly, that's kind of how it is. Any farther down, and I mean, Sam Hoiberg is a walk-on, and he's
right
going above and beyond right now. So you really can't ask for much more beyond that, unfortunately. So, but it was tough, and the guys, they got down. They were ahead by 15. Michigan State came back, and it's almost as if Michigan State got into their heads. I mean, Michigan State just really, I think, psychologically just kind of stunning them. Unfortunately,
did you see somebody posted a very short clip of one of the Michigan State players looking at Casey Tominaga and saying, "Shut the fuck up."
Yeah, like very matter of fact. It was first half, and it was like halfway through. So like nothing. Like he said that, and nothing really changed. Nebraska was playing really well, and I want to know what Tominaga was saying to him. If he was saying anything in English, I don't know. But I want to know what he was saying to piss the guy off that much, because that was funny.
So we got Iowa. We still have Iowa on the road.
Last game of the year.
Yeah. What do we think of that? Actually, what do you think of that?
Well, we beat them already this year. It was kind of one of our key, it was kind of our key wins early on in the season, other than Creighton. It was a good win. I was playing a little bit better. I mean, they upset Michigan State last Saturday. What was it? They had like how many threes in the last 2 seconds of the game? I mean, it was an absurd win for a team that's known for defense and not known for offensive prowess whatsoever. So I think they kind of pulled that out of their ass, to be honest with you. But we are heading to Iowa City. We're playing them there. It should be tough. But we've beaten them once before, and I don't think the team has changed that much whatsoever. The Hawks will be favored, as they should be. But it wouldn't surprise me if Nebraska pulls off the upset. I mean, we've had these same horses for the past month and a half. They should be able to go into Iowa City and at least give them hell. So yeah, I mean, I would say our chances are good for an upset. Not saying it's gonna happen, but it should be good.
So Indiana goes into Purdue and knocks off Purdue at Mackey Arena. And then Indiana comes home, and Iowa blasted them at Assembly Hall. Mm-hmm. The Big Ten is just a nightmare apocalypse of beating each other to death this year.
Well, and we're not the only ones. Like, I mean, you got one really good team in the Big Ten who's vulnerable. You've got two really in Purdue. You got two really bad ones in Minnesota and Ohio State. And then you've got a bloodbath in between. And I was looking at the Pac-12 standings. It's kind of similar. You've got UCLA up top, but even they're vulnerable. And then you got a bunch of what the heck's in the middle. ACC, I was looking at the ACC standings the other day. Pitt is leading the ACC right now. They're like number 25th in the nation, and they just got beat by Notre Dame. Big East, they're not going to have nearly as many teams in the tournament as they have historically. The only conference I'm confident on is the Big 12. In terms of like they may not be top to bottom deep like a lot of these conferences I just talked about, but their top teams are still talented as heck. I mean, Kansas hasn't had a big man all year, but they should make a decent run in the tournament still. I mean, it's funny. Like, it's almost as if nobody wants to be number one in the NCAA this year. I mean, that number one has bounced around so many times. So, I mean, it's not just the Big Ten. It's kind of everybody right now. And I mean, outside of Duke, who's phenomenal at home this year, their road record's not that great. UNC hasn't been that great. Kentucky, I don't know. They might be getting a new coach sometime because Calipari's not making the people happy there right now.
Wow.
I jumped the SEC. Wouldn't it be weird if Alabama won the national championship?
It'd be tragic.
I think I think Kevin mentioned to me the other day. He's like, some team in the Big 12 will beat the crap out of them in the tournament. So I guess there's not much. I haven't watched really any SEC basketball this year, so I really don't know. But it's not just the Big Ten; it's across basketball. Like, it's a weird year.
Why is this?
I think first off, you've had a lot of coaching changes over the past few years. Villanova has a new coach relatively, like I think 2 years ago they got a new one. Duke's got a new coach. Year before that, UNC had a new coach. A lot of top schools have recycled recently, and a lot of them are kind of historical schools for the most part.
Right.
So I think that has a lot to do with it. You also have the fact that, the one and dones are pretty much normal. The transfer portal, you think it's bad in football. It's been full speed ahead in basketball since day one. You got to remember, even before the transfer portal opened up, Tim Miles was using transfers like crazy. Remember, nonstop. So this has been going on for a while. So you don't have a steady stream of guys who are there 3, 4, heck, 5 years now. That's another factor of it. You don't have those players, and excuse me, unlike football where you have 11 guys on the field at a time and 85 or 84, however many scholarship players at once. Basketball, you got 14 plus a handful of walk-ons. So if you have 6 or 7 guys leave, which a lot of these teams are anymore, that can really mess up your team's dynamic.
I think that's what people don't understand is they kind of look at Nebraska and they go, well, he hasn't kept the team every year and year after year. They don't ever look at other teams because everybody else is doing the same thing. It's just a mess. I don't know. I was going to say something kind of leading and dirty, but I won't say that. It's just it's a smorgasbord. It's just like go to the old country buffet and pick your flavor with the guy that's going to be on your team this year. Boy, that's a horrible analogy, but it is. It's all over the place. It's not just Nebraska. It's not just Fred Hoiberg having guys leave after year. It's everybody is having people leave and move around, and it's very difficult to build a team. So, okay, just for 1 minute, before I forget, I want you, everybody there, all the listeners, I want you to think about this Iowa-Nebraska basketball game. If Iowa loses to us, that will mean that Nebraska has beat them in football in our darkest moments since World War II. Okay? In the era of World War II, when we had nobody but 4Fs playing for us, we beat them in football and kept them from winning the Big Ten West. And a happy nation congratulated us by not having Iowa play in the Big Ten championship. And we beat them in basketball once. If we beat them again in basketball, we will have swept them in basketball, and it will hurt. Okay? Mm-hmm. It will hurt them. And any Iowa fan that would walk up to you and say shit to you, you could crush into the ground, just smash them. Because we are also in some of our darkest days in basketball. Maybe not this season. It looks like Fred Hoiberg has kind of gone, okay, I tried it my way the first 3 years. Now I'm going to try coaching and doing a different form or playing a different way in basketball. And it seems to be working this year. But that would be, I don't know. We'd need T-shirts or something. We would need T-shirts. We need T-shirts to just, not just fuck Iowa T-shirts. I'll come up with some.
I was going to say, don't we have somebody who can make T-shirts for us?
Yeah, some snappy phrase about stinky, smelly Iowa big
3-0 in the sports that matter.
Yeah, there you go. Something like that. It's Sunday. It is Sunday at 1:00, right?
Sunday, yeah. I think 1 or 1:30, yeah.
Okay,
Sunday,
there's a problem.
The year before the Big Ten tournament.
There's a problem with that because Nebraska baseball plays Ole Miss on Sunday at 1:30 p.m. at the U.S. Bank Stadium in downtown Minneapolis, and I really want to go see a Nebraska baseball game this year, and I want to see them play one of these teams. I want to see them play either Vandy, which I'm not going to be able to do because I have to work tomorrow. Saturday they play Hawaii. I'd really rather watch them play Ole Miss on Sunday. So I don't know if anybody out there is going to the Metrodome, U.S. Bank Stadium on Sunday to watch Nebraska baseball. Please let me know.
Explain to me what's going on with Nebraska. I haven't been because I'm following basketball. What's going on with Nebraska baseball right now? They got swept in their first series they had the year, and they came back and beat South Alabama. I have no idea how good they are. What's going on with the team?
Well, I think this is kind of common for Nebraska baseball to do every season. They usually play some pretty good teams on their home courts or home fields, and when in the cold weather, that whole crap, and they usually play poorly, and then somebody says fire the pitching coach, and then we go on with our lives. Now, I think in the first series, I think honestly the San Diego coach and the way the team mentally prepared themselves, I think that had a lot to do with it. I mean, I only listened to the games, but it sounded like the San Diego coach was out of the dugout all the time and screwing with them and doing stuff, and I think that that had a lot to do with their mentality. Gotcha. And then the bullpen, for some reason, just did not perform well. Shea Shanaman has been very reliable, and he went into his spots in those games and just pitched horribly. And then against South Alabama, he got in, and his first few batters, I mean, they were terrible. I mean, it was like, oh my God, one of our solid guys is falling apart. And then all of a sudden he pulled it out and started, being Shea Shanaman that we want him to be. So I think the first series was more like, we don't know what we're doing together as a team. That's what I'm going with. And then against South Alabama, who is supposed to be actually a decent team, they beat the shit out of them. I mean, they scored a lot of runs, and they held.
Okay, so South Alabama's a good team. Okay.
Yeah, I know South Alabama shouldn't be a pushover. No, it's not like we're playing. I was going to say Rutgers, but Rutgers is good at baseball.
Yeah, they're decent finally. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see more what happens. I think, when you look at them, they're going up against Vanderbilt Friday. I mean, Vanderbilt's one of the best teams in the nation every year. Hawaii probably just be able to, should beat them up. And then Ole Miss, they're SEC, last year's champs. Mm-hmm. The fact that Minnesota got two of those teams to come to Minnesota and play at US Bank Stadium is pretty phenomenal for Minnesota. Now, I can tell you one thing about US Bank. During the pandemic, right, Todd and I were there. I had literally like almost the entire stadium to myself as a photographer. I had like the entire end zone, I think, to myself for one of those games. And it was pretty kind of weird. But one time I took a shot, I think it was an Ohio State third baseman, and he's trying to catch a fly ball, and I took a shot of him, and I'm looking through him at a long lens so I can see his whole face and everything real close, and he is terrified when he's going up like this. And I'm like, I have never seen a guy that afraid to catch the ball, and I didn't understand what was going on. And then later, I saw I think it was a second baseman, and he did the same thing. He kind of went up, and he was like, like this. And I finally realized, I stood up in US Bank Stadium and turned around and looked to see what they were looking at. And the sun coming off the clear roof in that stadium, it's like being being stabbed in the eyeball with just bright light. And I realized none of these guys could see. And then I went down and I was leaving, and I was talking to one of the Minnesota people, and I said, I noticed that Minnesota scheduled all their games in the late afternoon or evening, and they don't have any morning games. And he turned and he looked at me and he said, home field advantage, huh? They knew what they were doing all along. So tomorrow, Nebraska and Vanderbilt have to play at 11 a.m. Nebraska's already played in that stadium. So somebody will at least be able to tell them about. And of course, tomorrow it'll probably be overcast as March. Yeah. But Vanderbilt's, it could be interesting to see what happens.
That'd be fun, yeah. And it'd be nice if we could at least knock off Vandy. I think Vandy's a better team over Ole Miss this year, right? I think. Yeah. I've
been letting Aaron and Todd do most of the baseball stuff.
Yeah.
My entire life right now is buried in 1890s newspapers.
How's that going? You've been sending me articles, man. It's been fun to read some of the stuff you've been pulling up in those the videos you've been making over, like 1892 Nebraska football has been awesome. I mean, how's that been going for you? What have you enjoyed about that? Like, why'd you start doing that?
I decided to start doing it because, we're going to bring Greg in. Greg is going to join us. And we'll just start with this. Okay, well, Greg just joins himself. He doesn't wait for me to bring him in.
So.
Hi, Greg. Okay, ask me the question again, Patrick, and we'll start this segment.
Well, you've been doing those videos. You've done 2 or 3 videos right now on the really old school, historic Husker football and college football in general from the 1890s. Like, what brought that about, and what have you really kind of enjoyed about doing that whole series?
Well, what honestly brought it about is I looked at this off season and I thought, number one, I need to get better at video editing. Number two, I don't want to try to sit on YouTube and make videos that are, let's be honest. I mean, it's an off season, and what we're going to have is glory story. Matt Rule's the greatest guy in the world news. That's what you have to come up with, here, eat this Snickers bar, eat this Twinkies bar, reporting stuff, and I just thought, I don't want to do that this off season. I can't. I get it. We're excited about Matt Rule. I'm excited about Matt Rule, but I also want to see how he coaches and how we play football, and that's not till the fall. The history stuff has always interested me, and I thought, nobody's really, if you go out on YouTube and look, nobody has ever done really in-depth stuff about college football history. I mean, like in-depth. Like, what did the flying wedge look like? What did the mass momentum plays look like? What happened in the 1890s to college football that all the changes came about? And I've always, when I first started Corn Nation, I decided that I would read about college football history so that I would know what I was talking about when I started writing about sports. So I read gobs of books. And part of this is going back and recovering my memory of those things, but it's also, that was like 2006 I started Corn Nation, right? Well, now you can go out and there is so much stuff. There is so much available that you can research, and you can do things that you couldn't have done back then, that, just like newspapers.com and the archive sites that have come online, and you can look at newspapers across Nebraska throughout the history of Nebraska, and for every hometown out there except mine, because our newspaper building burned down and all the papers burned up with it, which is really sad. But it is sad because there is a story there about Camp Curtis that never got done. And that's in Nebraska. My hometown of Curtis is what's called NCTEA. NCTA. It is an extension of the University of Nebraska. It's an ag college. And years ago in the like late 50s, I believe it was like it was a high school where everybody sent their kids. They came off the farm and they went to high school there, all from all over the place, and they had dorms, and that was almost like a college high school. But I mean, Bill Jennings brought Nebraska players out to Curtis, and he had what he called Camp Curtis, and it was similar to what Paul Bear Bryant did at Junction City. I can't remember Paul Bear Bryant is famous for taking his players out and just beating the shit out of them to see who would survive.
In West Texas, yeah.
Yeah, and in the papers were stuff about Camp Curtis, and I went down there to look. I mean, I grew up there. One of my best friend's moms used to own the newspaper. But I went out there to look, and I realized that I couldn't find anything. And then I went back later, and I realized I had the dates wrong that I was looking at. And the people there that owned the paper then were like looking at me like I was some kind of communist. And I didn't even have long hair then, for God's sakes. And I wasn't known. I was known for swearing a lot and being kind of it was my hometown, for God's sakes. But, I asked my mom, do you remember anything about Camp Curtis? And she said, oh, Bill Jennings was in the bar a lot.
That explains a lot, actually.
Yeah. Let's say. So if you want to make comparisons between some coaches, there you go. Okay, I talked enough. Back to basketball. Let's finish the conversation about basketball. Nothing changes in the Big Ten tournament if we beat Iowa or don't beat Iowa. We're still playing Minnesota, right?
I think for the most part, yeah, unless something weird happened. Though I just saw Minnesota just beat Maryland.
In basketball?
Yeah.
In men's basketball?
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah. So I don't think anything changes right now. No.
Okay, so we played Minnesota,
Hmm?
and let's just say we win. You have to be 500 to get into the NIT, right?
Yeah, you have to be 500 getting the NIT. Kevin and I were looking earlier this week. There's not a whole lot of prediction sites out there on the NIT. Um, so I mean, as of now, the couple I've seen have Nebraska like last four looking in, even in that area. So I mean, I know there's a lot of people at coordination who don't like my attitude on this over the past month, but Nebraska's really never had a chance in the NCAA this year, regardless of how well we're doing right now. It's just the numbers. This is simple math, folks. Like, there's no way we were getting in once we started our hot streak. It just was like so much outside of what Nebraska was doing had to come into play. So what does that leave us? That leaves us the NIT. NIT, we're gonna have to make a nice run into the Big Ten tournament to really, I think, get into the NIT. And then when it comes to, I think, CBI, CIT tournaments, I don't think many, if any, Power 5 conference teams really go to those. And on top of that, it costs money to play in those tournaments, which Nebraska has, but they're not gonna spend the money to do that, I don't think. So hopefully we get at least semifinals. I mean quarterfinals, I should say, in the Big Ten tournament. Maybe we might get in the NIT, just depending on how everything else falls. So I mean, it's gonna be a rough week. It's gonna be a long week next week if we keep winning. But I mean, I'm sorry, folks. We're not gonna make the NCAA tournament, and we maybe might make the NIT. That's just how things are.
Okay, long term, because I'm not going to let Greg talk now because he butted in there. Long term, Fred Hoiberg returns next year.
Oh yeah. Even before this run, I was on the camp that Fred does come back, because even within a lot of our losses, we had gone past the 10 wins, and grand scheme of things, there was progress this year. He gutted his staff last year. He got a new defensive philosophy, which way fits in a lot better in the Big Ten than the old one was. We competed in a lot of these losses. We really did. Even with those losses early on to a lot of our players, we did well. Here's another thing you guys have to realize. Fred coaches a team that is the third most popular team in Lincoln. To get a coach that's better than him to come in, like I don't mean to be defeatist on this at all, but it's 50,000 foot view. He did enough this year. He beat Creighton, beat Iowa. Todd, I see it there. He beat a lot of decent teams. He beat a lot of teams that he should have beaten later on this season. He beat the Minnesotas. He had upsets against Maryland. He beat Rutgers in Piscataway, which nobody on here will probably agree with me, but most people believe, Rutgers is a good basketball team, and they're tough.
They are. Yeah.
And that's not in Big Ten on the road is tough to do. Look at a majority of these teams in the Big Ten this year. Nobody's really doing well on the road. Very few teams are doing really well on the road. So, I mean, grand scheme of things, like unless next year stinks, he's here. Like I think that the last 3 weeks is guaranteed he's going to be here next year. After the season is over and we see kind of where everybody stands and who's still here, we can kind of do a rundown of kind of how next year's team's going to look. But
okay, Derek Walker gone.
Who's Albert going to get?
Derek Walker is gone. Sam Griesel is gone. Casey Tominaga may be gone.
Maybe, I don't know.
What? Who's going to be our team?
Well, 2 of them are injured on the bench, or one of them's gone.
Right, Bendemel's gone.
Yeah, Bendemel's gone,
which is really unfortunate.
But there's a lot of young guys still on the bench that we haven't really seen a whole lot from.
Okay, let me be very, very, very specific. Very specific. Who's going to replace Derek Walker?
That's As of now, probably Wilhelm. And he's got some work to do.
Yeah. That son of a bitch better be serial killing in the offseason. I'll tell you that much right there.
Yeah. I assume they're in the dance if they win the Big Ten tourney. Well, of course, but we got to win the Big Ten tourney. And there's a lot of bloodthirsty teams who are in the Big Ten that I would be shocked if we get to that point.
What about this Bull kid? Was it John Bull?
Yeah.
Is he going to come? Are we going to get a 7'2" guy from Sudan?
It'd be great if we did. I mean, he's got some pretty good quarters coming, but I haven't seen any crystal balls on where if he's coming to Nebraska or not. So
can't we throw frickin' money at him like we are going to? You know damn well we're going to throw money at Dylan Royal, and he's going to come to Nebraska. Can we do the same shit in basketball, for God's sakes?
Well, the 1891 initiative just came together and committed to basketball, so hopefully we can get some deals there. You know, more than just, I love them, but more than just a burrito.
Are you ready, Greg? I'm ready for Greg to talk, and he's not even paying attention.
Hi, Greg.
Hi, Patrick. How are you?
I'm good. I've been dealing with a cranky old man all night. What have you been up to?
I apologize that I had to force that upon you.
No worries. Oh, great question. Can Nebraska ball, that's one word, not two, hit the portal and try to get another Walker? Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Fred really goes hard in the portal this year. Again, it served him well last year. Might as well do it again because, I mean, I think we have maybe one guy committed to the class this year. So hit the portal. And here's the thing. We've got another month before we even worry about that. So, yeah, no, great point. Great point, Owen. Hit the portal. He's going to hit the portal.
I think Owen is lobbying for a job. Just look at the phrase. Can Nebraska hit the portal and try to get another Walker? And his name is Owen Walker.
Oh.
I think Owen's saying, put me in, coach, I'm ready to play.
I hope you're 6'4", 230.
No, John, didn't we discuss last week about the restrictions on nil money to like Keisei Tominaga and other players who were not
here on a visa?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Basically, if you come over, you are basically out of the deal of earning anything. However, if you go to Husker Hounds, the store, the website, you can build your own player jersey, and Tominaga's is on there.
Ooh.
Yeah, I found that out today. That was a Kevin find. So I'm not 100% what that is anymore. Unless they're just doing something and they don't know they're doing it incorrectly. Like they're breaking a rule, and I don't know. I mean, I haven't looked it up in a while. Maybe they fixed that rule. I don't know.
Or
it's it's the federal government.
Or they're just not paying. I mean, realistically, they can do it, right, and just not pay the kid?
This is NCAA stuff.
No, this just be federal government and immigration visas.
Oh.
Or not immigration, but a visa. If you're here on a specific type of visa, you can't work or can't make
Student
revenue.
Visa, probably, right?
That's the federal government stuff.
Okay.
They're not going to change.
Unless you can circumvent that and send the money directly to something in the other country. Go around the player and send the money elsewhere. Dude, I'm in finance. This is what I think about.
I hear you. Same. We have a running, I guess, segment more or less on the show about what's Greg drinking this week, and Fred wants to know that, and he also says blink twice if I'm being held against my... I actually arranged Patrick to be here tonight because I didn't get home from work until about right before I jumped on, honestly, so I didn't give myself an opportunity to grab a beverage this week, Fred, so apologies. And then Fred says authorities are on the way. I don't have anything in front of me, but what I do have in the fridge is Killian's Irish Red. So
I don't think I've had that since college, like 20 years ago.
It hasn't been that long, has it, Patrick?
I graduated in 2004.
Yeah, I guess we are about the same age, aren't we?
You can go get a beer, Greg, if you want.
Yeah, go grab one. Man.
I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to. I'm gonna be like John. I'm gonna try to do this sober and see if I survive.
Well, I don't really do it sober per se. You know, my brain's all awash and gush. It's just constantly mushy.
John, how long's it been since you had you used to drink on this show?
Did I?
How long has it been since you? Yeah, I mean not a live version in front of everybody, but the recordings. You'd have
63 beers a piece. Yeah. April 2020. I will be alcohol free for 3 years.
Congrats.
Yeah.
You're a better man than me.
Well, I also take a monthly injection for my brain injury, and I have no desire to find out how that would interact with alcohol. Really, none. Okay.
What? Anything else? Did I miss anything outside of the basketball conversation?
We talked baseball.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, they
John
didn't suck.
Yeah.
I'm going to show this graphic because I told Patrick before the show started that I wanted to open it up a little bit more.
Okay.
And I'm going to show this graphic to people.
Wait, time out. Before we do that, John,
Yes?
because I know there were some technical difficulties on Monday Night Therapy,
Uh-huh.
which that conversation was supposed to largely center around wrestling. Did you guys at all discuss the big announcement that was speculated right here last week on Five Heart about volleyball at Memorial Stadium? Did you guys get around talking about that on Monday?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, we did.
Okay. All right, moving on.
Okay,
Show your
you
graphic.
ready? You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
O.J.
Well.
Simpson says Alex Murdaugh will beat murder rap despite likely killing his wife. That's O.J. Simpson, as in that O.J. Simpson. Yes, I put this up here because I thought, is it too soon?
No. I think the too soon thing is dead.
Okay.
Wasn't that 1994?
I just, you know what? You know what? My immediate thought of this was, number one, Alex Murdaugh was found guilty of murdering
Like an
his
hour
wife
ago.
and son. If you're following this case at all, but my other thought about this was, when is it going to be time that we allow O.J. Simpson to come back to a broadcast booth for college football?
XFL.
No. Don't you even think about tarnishing the glory that is the XFL with O.J. Simpson. Put him in the USFL. All right, my Battlehawks are 2-0, and we haven't even played a home game yet.
That was a real headline today in the New York Post. They literally, you're like,
But
wow.
but also write a book however many years back about like, I didn't do it, but if I did, this is how I would have done it, or something like
I
that.
don't think they published it.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably for the
I
best.
think it was ready to go, and the publisher backed out, I think.
Yes.
Is that
Oh,
right?
okay. Greg, the other graphic that we did not show yet was one you provided.
Can I push the magic button?
Yeah, you can.
All right. So I came across this on Facebook. I think this was actually shared through ESPN or one of the big. This was not something that the institution itself put out, but they're getting the word out there. All right. Let's go to the image. Record-breaking attendance. Colorado has shattered the attendance record for a spring football game and has sold 30,013 tickets for the April 22nd exhibition.
Now,
This is the prime effect, but
Yeah.
I think what stands out more than anything is they're selling or they're setting a record with 30,000 tickets. If you had to speculate, how many? What's Nebraska's spring game attendance record? It's 80,000 or 70,000, isn't it?
I think it's 80 something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the full stadium, but it's close.
Whatever it will be, April 22nd, 2023, that damn sure it's going to be the record. That's what's going to be. 115,000, stuffed. People are going to stuff other people in their pants for this spring game.
We're going to have 3 children in one overcoat wobbling their way in like a cartoon. You're welcome. Standing room only, hanging from the rafters at Memorial. Do you think now this is a sincere question. Do you think that this year's spring game is going to outdo them all? I mean, outdo all past Nebraska spring games as far as attendance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, last year's spring game, I went, sat with Todd. It's the first time I sat in the stands in a very long time. You could just feel everybody, the disappointment, people all around you. They still had hope, for God's sakes. I don't know why, but they just no tackling, and the biggest cheers were for the punter. I mean,
but what about Scott Frost's first year?
What's that?
What about Scott Frost's first year? The prodigal son returns.
I don't even. It didn't happen. It didn't happen.
I'm just saying,
didn't happen in my brain.
That was gigantic when he came back.
It was.
But
people didn't stuff other people in their pants to get them into the stadium for that one. And I'm calling it right now. People would literally be stuffing other people into like large bodysuits and acting like they're a single person when they're really 4 or 5.
So I just pulled up, I said Nebraska football spring game attendance. I just threw that in Google, and 1011now.com says the last year's, the 2022 game, attracted more than 53,000 fans. So we can assume anywhere between 53,000 and 53,999, because at that point they'd say 54,000. No attendance restrictions for the first time since 2019. So, 2019, 18, 20, I can't remember now. I'm bad at memory. 19 would have been Frost first, correct? Yeah. So with 2 of his seasons coming under attendance restrictions because of the pandemic, 19 would have been the
was it 18?
18, 19.
I
guess we gave 5 years, right?
Pandemic. I think his 3rd year was a pandemic. Yeah, because 21 was his 4th year.
All right, so here we go. Oh, this is perfect. No game in 2020 because of COVID.
Right.
2019 had 85,946. 2018, which was Frost's first season, had 86,818. 2017 had 78,312. I mean, I could go.
My God,
further,
we love our football.
Isn't that a little ridiculous? So, do you honestly think? Do you think that we're going to have 87,000 people in the stadium this year on April 22nd?
Yes. If it'll fit that many. Somebody said, Fred Sacco, that guy, he said, isn't work being done on the stadium that will hamper attendance? The potential for huge. I don't think so either. But again, there's the stuffing of people in your pants and carrying them into the stadium.
You just can't get your head out of your pants tonight, can you, John?
Well, we also have the regulars, the Five Heart crew knows that Fred has a lot of, I don't know if disdain, maybe appreciation for a good pun. So he says a former HC stuffed some things in his pants in the last 5 years. Hey-o.
Okay, maybe they just get rid of the clear bag policy for one frickin' spring game, and you can bring duffel bags full of, whatever.
Midgets?
Children. I don't. Yes.
Full disclosure, I'm allowed to say that because there is a town not 10 miles from my house, Freeburg, Illinois, and their high school mascot there are the Free Midgets. That's a true story.
So the town's named after a Leonard Skinner song.
No, Free Bird. Not Free Bird, Freeburg.
Berg. Oh, okay. All right.
I'm sure they
Yeah.
sang it that way a few times.
Freeburg,
yeah.
And they're guaranteed
and
not
this
to have a-
burg will never change.
You know, one of my friends in college, this is a college story, was a hockey player, and he had a duffel bag that would fit a 16-gallon keg in it. So we were able to carry 16-gallon kegs right past security, right up to our rooms. And what we would do is in SRAM 6 is where I lived, is, you know, where the desks are against the wall, there was a panel, you could pull it out, and it was open to the next room. And if they pulled their panel out, you could literally move that keg back and forth between rooms. So if somebody came and knocked on the door and said, "We heard you had a keg in here," you would quickly shove the keg into the next room, push the panel up, and nobody was the wiser. And when my
That's
kid,
brilliant.
one of my kids went and visited SRAM, and they took us through SRAM and showed us how good the dining was now. But they took us through there, and I was like, you know, them panels open up, and he looks at me and he goes, "You're not supposed to tell him this part." I'm like, "Do they still open that up?" And he goes, "Yeah, don't, you know, this is not part of the tour." All
Probably
the other
nothing they
parents
didn't
are like,
already
"Really?"
know. So Joel had an interesting question. I think we've touched on this a little bit, but will Memorial Stadium be replaced with a modern NFL-style stadium?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes and no.
Okay, I'm curious because I say no, but I'm. All right, John,
I mean,
you first.
The way they answer this question is by asking yourself, was the $6 million man still himself after they replaced all the parts? Yes, he was. If you get a knee replacement or a hip replacement or a shoulder replacement, are you still the same human being? Yes, you are, but you just have upgraded components. And if you do enough of that stuff, you too will be a modern NFL stadium, NFL style stadium.
Is it kind of like the ship of Theseus?
The ship of feces?
Not feces, Theseus.
It's a theory. It's the idea that you have this ship, and over time you replace its parts as things go along. Is the ship still the original ship it started out with, even though everything about it is different?
I think
right.
it's whether or not it's cursed.
Are you saying Memorial Stadium is cursed, John?
Well, it is, but it's okay. The volleyball thing will take care of the curse.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Unless they lose.
So we don't have to sacrifice Solich at the 50-yard line?
No, we don't have to sacrifice Frank Solich.
Okay.
I mean, we could say, not Frank. I mean, Frank, you know, come on. He's just an old guy like me. Let him just, you know, kind of live out the rest of his life. We could sacrifice some other
Bo
son of a
Pelini.
bitch who comes to mind.
Bo Pelini.
I mean, Bo, he's harmless and he never comes around anymore.
Patrick, you said yes and no.
Yes and no. NFL style, I doubt it. If Nebraska does go the route of, because I mean, administrators have said for a while now that like expansion is done. Like structurally, it cannot take any more expansion. Had to use some upgrades, yeah, but and John and I have talked about this before. There's only so much retrofitting you can do to a place, you know, before it's kind of like, is this worth it? Is it financially worth it? Are there better things we could do? What I could see happening is I could see Nebraska maybe not doing a total tear down. Like, you can leave parts of the stadium, like, you know, the pillars with the sayings and stuff like that. But basically tearing the guts out and replacing it, but something more along the lines of, I want to say, first of all, it'd be smaller, let's be honest. If anything they build, it's not going to be 89,000 or 86. It's going to be something smaller. Demographics across all of college football are just pointing towards that. People are not going to games like they used to. I mean, even Alabama's having an issue. You know, they sell out, but in terms of attendance, you can tell that, you know, they don't always show up. So I think it would be smaller. It would probably be a lot more form-fitting, like Oregon Stadium. Was it Autzen? I would like to see something a little bit tighter, a little bit steeper, something that can keep the noise in a little bit more, kind of the anti-big house, if you will. That's just a personal preference. But I could see Nebraska, you know, if they have to, just tearing it down just based off of logistics. and putting something in there. I don't see it being an NFL. I can see it being more college-esque just because that's what people want and what is expected. But where it sits right now, I mean, they're running out of things they can do with. So
Sure.
I mean, 20 years from now, and again, it's not going to be 5 years from now, but 15, 20 years, who knows what's going to happen. And I know Trev has talked about they continue, like they're talking more now about upgrades to the stadium. So there are variables involved. I think that, why wouldn't you even discuss tearing it down and rebuilding it?
So a couple follow-ups. For the state, realistically, it's hallowed ground. Ann Arbor would never discuss tearing down the big house.
You can't. It's a hole in the ground.
Well, you know what I mean. Like they would never play Michigan football anywhere else.
No.
If you build something, where would you put it? To be outside of downtown?
Well, you just tear down the stadium where it is, and you could start rebuild from there. You leave like the pillars or something, and kind of go from there.
So as a guy who watched a baseball stadium be torn down and another one erected in St. Louis, like half a block over, I don't know if there's enough time to get it done.
Well, the Vikings had a place to play at TCF at the time. Mm-hmm. They played at the Gopher Stadium while their U.S. Bank was being built. I think you'd take 2-3 years to build a stadium in Nebraska, and where would they play in the meantime? Yeah. I mean, that's Mm-hmm. Maybe the Chat GPT, if you ask it, how can we quickly build a portable stadium, a giant dome stadium in Lincoln, Nebraska, Chat GPT will come up to it because artificial intelligence can do anything.
Well, I mean, here's another thing, and this is, I mean, technically UNL's campus is a bit of a city campus,
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't know. You do have land out near the airport, hypothetically, but you don't want to turn into, let's say, a Miami where your stadium is too far away from the campus.
Right.
You also have land around the rail yard you might be able to use, which wouldn't be too terribly far away. And what you could do is with the excess land, you could make a stadium that's more conducive to pregame activities, tailgating, and whatnot. Whereas right now, everybody's kind of scattered. When I go to, not so much anymore, but like when I was younger, it was kind of like, okay, what side of the stadium am I going to be tailgating in? Because I'm not going to the other side, like east or west. You know what I mean? Like it's going to take me 30 minutes to get to another tailgate. Sometimes it's
right.
And the flow is definitely not there. It's one or the other. So maybe moving out would just upgrade the entire game day experience as a whole. And again, you don't want to take it too far away from downtown because you're taking away from the businesses downtown.
Right.
More tailgating is not going to take away from it so much, but just the activity within itself. Right. You take that too far away, you're going to have issues.
Yeah. A lot of good comments here. I want to touch on them. Todd says, as a taxpayer in Lincoln, I would like a tax refund while the Huskers play at Seacrest Field. Seacrest, like Ryan.
Yeah.
They could build a big floating platform like that thing Rihanna was on.
That seems unnecessary. Fred says we will never have a retractable roof. That conversation was in the chats. They'll do the best they can to make the existing place work and honor the tradition as long as it's structurally sound. I don't disagree. I feel like when they can't do any more renovations, look, at least according to ownership, that's why the Rams are no longer in St. Louis, because they wanted a shiny new stadium, and the county and the city, we'll put the funds together, and then Stan's like, nah, that's not good enough. So he didn't like the proposal or whatever. He's a douche. But anyway, that's moving on. And now we have the Battle Hawks. Caca is the law. We're 2-0. Moving on. I think
It's also
got
bad. It's also I also would recommend comparing NFL to college because most NFL stadiums it is through the city who funds and builds those stadiums, where most college stadiums are built by the athletic departments themselves.
Which is Joel's question right here. Would the Nebraska taxpayers be paying for a new stadium?
You know what?
I mean, I got to say, Pat.
I'll go ahead and
I just want to say, stop it, John, for a minute. I asked the question, and Patrick's over there just shaking his head. That works for the video, folks, but this is also a podcast, so we're going to need you.
I'm sorry. This is a podcast, too. Yeah. No, I don't see it happening. One, Nebraska has the money privately in the coffers and the Big Ten money on top of that. It's the money's. If we really hit the point to where they want to spend multi-millions of dollars for a brand new stadium, I think they can't get the state of Nebraska to pay for that. That's just, right. I mean, there's just no way that even the most diehard Husker fan in Harrison, Nebraska would be like, no, I'm not sending my money 8 hours for that.
I could just, next week call Joe Ricketts and we'll see what we can do.
What about Pete Ricketts?
He's busy. He's in Washington.
Yeah, go to the top.
And then it says, did maybe it's different because maybe the Huskers lease PBA, but taxpayers.
City of Lincoln owns that.
Gotcha.
Right.
I mean, they could go that route, but I don't see that happening.
Lots of monster truck rallies and tractor pulls.
And then Fred said, Fred's a former Bears fan. I guess maybe reformed, perhaps reformed, or it says Soldier Field is still there, even though it's morphed from a spaceship to a diaphragm, and it's ancient.
Well, it sounds like aren't they on the path to build an entirely brand new stadium and like concourse, like whole experience, aren't they?
I think they're moving outside of Chicago to do it too.
Well, you kind of have to. Where are you going to do it?
I don't know. Tell you what, you want to make a spectacle? Put it right off the shore in Lake Michigan. Yeah, a floating stadium. Make it happen, Captain.
I like that idea.
All I have, John, are good ideas, but nobody ever sees it.
Floating in the air, not in the
No, floating on the water.
Floating in the air.
John, stop.
You
could just lower it. You could just lower it and let everybody get on, and then just go back up. And
what is your just obsession with wanting to be like Rihanna tonight?
I was thinking more that Sky City thing in Bespin Station or whatever it was in Star Wars.
Oh, Cloud City.
Yeah, Cloud City kind of thing.
That's fine. You know what? Okay, that works.
The technology's there. Yeah.
What do you know, Patrick? You work in finance, not an engineer.
Speaking of technology, I can tell you what hell is. What hell is going into a stadium like Memorial Stadium and trying to wire that place for modern technology. Because I've had to do stuff like that in my past, and it is, you look. I think it was like a college in Louisiana wanted us to figure out how we were going to wire buildings that were built in 1880 and 1870, and I looked at them and you said, "Well, you got $1 billion because that's how much it's going to cost us to do this." And when you look at that kind of stuff, then you really start thinking, how are we going to sell building a new stadium? And that's really what it comes down to, is how would they sell to the state of Nebraska, we are going to build a new stadium, and Memorial Stadium was great, but it's time for us to move on to other things. Mm-hmm. And of course, they need me to do that because I am the greatest salesman ever.
You know what really tickles? First of all, Owen says that...
You sell Kabi yoga pants. You can sell anything.
Hell of a salesman. Owen says, John, you shine bright like a diamond, obviously a Rihanna reference. But I think what tickles me the most is that this whole stadium conversation started by poo-pooing on Colorado and their lofty 30,000 tickets sold.
Yeah. Now, is that really, should we be making fun of that? Because, I mean, it looks like Deion is a force. He's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, but let's be honest. Does Colorado really know what they're getting into with Deion?
Nobody does. That's why this is going to be so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, like Deion is a force within himself, and Colorado is a very. It's more academic. I mean, you remember back in the '90s, they used to say, we're an academic institution with a football problem. Like they pride themselves on their academic side more than anything. It's why they don't have anything because they don't spend money on athletics. Deion is all flash. He's all about promoting, which he does a phenomenal job with. But will Colorado let him? And I mean, if you guys have watched the news lately, he has said quite a few things on a fairly conservative level that really has ruffled a lot of feathers in the People's Republic of Boulder.
What has he said, Patrick?
Well, the one was, let's see, he wants a quarterback from a two-parent home, mother-father. That was one thing, but he wants his defensive lineman from a one-parent home. That comes from a mom, like mom, and that has to, fight for things. That's what he straight up said. He's also, I also saw that he's getting a lot of heck for his, he's a fairly religious man, like his prayers, which I don't think people realize how much that still goes on in college sports.
Right.
Mainly.
Right.
Like that's normal. But because it's Boulder and because the lights are finally shining on them again in 20-some years, that's turning into a big deal. It's more than just primetime flash. Like we're gonna get the 5-star players. We're gonna put Lamborghinis in front of these guys, Louis Vuitton bags. It's more than just that. He has an ethos that is more akin to the Midwest and South than it is the Front Range of Colorado. Let me just put it like that, if that makes sense. So.
Well, okay. So Deion's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll say this though, his one of his assistants is a guy I know personally and have talked with when I worked in radio in Chadron, and that's Bill O'Boyle, who I believe is the defensive line coach for Colorado now. He was the head coach at Chadron State when Danny Woodhead was up there, and in his presser he was mentioning, he's like, if I had a Danny Woodhead, I'd take him today, or he mentioned a kid who was a Chadron High standout in football and basketball and track, played baseball. I'm gonna give him a shout out here. He didn't listen. He mentioned Joe McClain, who I called on the video when I was up in Chadron, and then he went on to have a lot of success at Chadron State as well. So, I'm not going to ever root for Colorado, but I'll always root for Bill O'Boyle. I don't know if that was a side tangent. Sorry.
That wasn't too bad.
Thank you, John. Mm-hmm. Anything else that we have this week, guys?
Well, we had Patrick's thing about the ACC.
Yeah, a lot of things.
Is it time to invest in crypto again?
Don't stop.
It depends in what areas, I would say. It depends in what kind of startups. It depends. There's variables around that I really I'm not 100% on. I'm working on that, okay?
Okay. Well, we'll have that on a future show. It's time to get back into the water. ACC and Florida State. Tell us about this, Patrick.
So Florida State came out last week, and they kind of shot across the bow at the Atlantic Coast Conference, basically when it comes to the fact that their media rights deal, which doesn't come up until 2036, is starting to pale in comparison to their peers. More importantly, the SEC, because let's be honest, Florida State is technically an SEC country up there in Tallahassee, right? So Florida State basically said, we're not exactly happy here for the most part. And the day after that, Clemson kind of jumped out and said, yeah, we're not happy either, which is funny because Clemson, 10 years ago is now in the position they were in right now. So this equal rights thing across, in terms of payments across all institutions, they were 100% down for. But now that Clemson's doing well, they think they're a little bit better, which I don't disagree with. But it brought up the fact that, what is an institution like the ACC going to do with the schools like Florida State, who probably could get more money elsewhere?
Right.
but the ACC cannot afford to lose them. But at the same time, the ACC cannot afford to give them any other, any perks that would detriment to the other schools in the ACC, because when when it gets closer to 2036 and those, the bargaining, the collective bargaining or whatever it's called, grant of rights comes up, Florida State's going to still look at bouncing, because there's still going to be less, and the other schools are still going to be less. The problem is that the ACC buyout's $120 million, which I know somebody in ESPN or somebody said, that's 4 years. They'll have it paid off in 4 years. There's other variables involved there, but it doesn't really matter. But we're looking at like $30 to $40 million difference between ACC school payouts and like the SEC and Big Ten. That's huge, and Florida State knows that. And I was listening to a podcast this morning, and they brought up a good point. Florida State has done well over the past 40 years in football. Athletic department's done very well, but they're still not a wealthy institution,
right,
as a whole. And a lot of that comes down to the pure fact that Florida State is historically a teacher college. And what do teachers not do? They don't exactly make money. And if you notice a lot of the institutions across the United States with good coffers, it's happened over generations. You had multiple graduates who have done well over time. You build up that, you take that money, you invest, you build it up. In some of these schools like Florida State, they've not had the opportunity to do that. And they know that. They can't just, Nebraska, for the most part, can fund with and without the Big Ten. It's much better with the Big Ten, but the money's there regardless. You know what I mean? Big Ten money, donor money is just like gravy after that. So, Florida State's not happy. They know it. They're in a conference that is probably even more different than what the Big 12 is going to be in terms of makeup of the schools. I mean, for the most part, ACC is still technically a basketball conference. Big Ten, SEC, most of those schools are fairly like-minded. Even the Pac-12, for the most part, those schools are relatively like-minded for the most part in terms of like academics are kind of the first part, and like the Big Ten, they pride themselves in the Olympic sports. ACC, I mean, you can't get more different than Boston College and Clemson. Right. I mean, Jesuit school up in Boston, kind of it's way more of an academic institution than anything. And they got Clemson, who I think they've got it. I mean, like they're at, I think, NCAA minimum for varsity sports sponsored. Like they've dropped some. And they make no bones that they are 100% behind football all the way. You get into, Syracuse basketball school, huge academic institution. Wake Forest. Right. It's, Wake Forest is like Vanderbilt. They're lucky to be in the conference, So you're having some issues. I don't think anything's going to be done anytime soon, but I mean, I think the grand scheme of things that you're going to start seeing what we had in the Big 12, and that is equal distribution's going to go away, and you're going to start seeing schools that bring in money start getting more money in some of these conferences than the lesser schools, because that's the only way they're going to be able to keep them in. It may not be fair. Luckily, Nebraska's in a conference of the Big Ten where an Ohio State gets that and is willing to be happy. SEC, there's enough schools that bring to the pot that it's going to be equal. But you get some of these schools in the ACC, I mean, it's like what Wake Forest brings to the table pales in comparison to some of these other schools. So
what do you think?
In those other schools, you start getting $30, $40, $50 million behind the SEC and the Big Ten, they're going to be like, why are we even in this conference? Something's going to have to be done. I don't have the answer, but I mean, Florida State brings up a very, very good point. Greg, you may go.
Yeah, thank you, sir. We talked a little bit about conference realignment and conference expansion last week. With these troubles that the ACC is facing, does that make it more plausible that independent but somewhat affiliated with ACC Notre Dame could, again, in a world where money runs things, we're like, oh, what do we do like that $60+ million that the Big Ten's making? Let's go test those waters.
I mean, maybe I know. I mean, Notre Dame's always had the open invitation to the ACC, and I think technically they actually make less money than the ACC schools right now. I mean, it's like 10 or 15 million less, which I mean, it's a bit. But here's the thing: the peace of mind of them being independent, I think, means more to them than that. And could they move over to the Big Ten? Maybe. It just really depends on what they're worth in the next 10, 15 years when the SEC and the Big Ten start really filling their coffers. And what is Notre Dame's? They're with. I think they're still with NBC. What are they getting out of that relationship? And is NBC willing to pay that money down the road? I think because it's Notre Dame, they still have the gravitas that like maybe three other schools have in the United States. I would say like the schools that could pull it off: Ohio State, USC, Texas tried it.
Right.
I mean, like I don't think Alabama could do it on their own as good as they are. I don't. Florida is big enough. I don't think they could pull it off. Georgia's big enough. I don't think they could pull it off. There's certain legacy programs that could do it, and that's it. And Notre Dame is, I mean, they can do it. They can still do it, but the longevity of it's going to be put to question at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay, ACC's in trouble.
I hope they stay independent, but that's just me.
Okay, what's the long term? Long term of this is that the Big Ten and SEC are going to basically rule every sport out there, and everybody else would be broke. I mean, the Pac-12's media negotiations are like, I don't, who is it? Apple is in on that, or they're not getting any money either.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they do like a third tier rights or something like that with Apple. But I think at the end of the day, they will probably go to a place like ESPN. Fox already said no. CBS said no. That's Paramount, right? Turner. No, I don't remember who's anymore. NBC, like all the other big ones have already said no to them. I think they're going to end up with some place like an ESPN, and a lot of USC and UCLA is really hurting them because they're gone, and so it's kind of what are they worth? And right now, I would say their media rights are probably worse than the Big 12's right now without Texas and Oklahoma, for the most part. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to the Pac-12, because you have a bunch of relatively like-minded institutions who don't have the pull. I mean, Oregon and Washington do, and that's about it. And the thing with Oregon and Washington bouncing to another conference, Oregon and Washington is if they bounce, they'll bounce to the Big Ten, okay? But here's the thing. Is them bouncing the Big Ten going to increase the net worth of the Big Ten, or is it going to decrease it? Because you're cutting up that part of the pie
right.
with
yes.
schools. Do they add anything in the grand scheme of things? I mean, it's a mess right now. I mean, it really is, and I feel bad for especially the Pac-12 schools because they have no place else to go. ACC, East Coast, there are options. They can figure something out, but out west, there's only so many institutions, and the two big boys just left.
But Cornhusker Corner has the solution. Every school just needs a YouTube channel to live stream all the home games. Their problem solved.
No, you're right. Jill Tilson brings up a good point. Most people don't know how to use streaming services. Okay, everybody on here knows how to use the streaming services. Our parents might. That's a problem. You know what I mean? Like they're still.
You're talking about me, really, is what you're talking about.
I would add them that maybe 10, 20 years on you.
Okay.
Like a lot of households who watch college, who want to watch their team, still have not cut the cord. And another problem is that there are so many different streaming options right now. It's getting expensive. The joke is now, people spend money, spending money on a streaming service is like nothing anymore. Well, we just add another $7.99 onto our bills, whatever. I mean, that's kind of how people are looking at it. But that's going to have to stop at some point. I mean, Amazon's one thing because I mean, let's be honest, most people who have it, however $10 a month or whatever, if anything that comes along sports wise is like free to them.
Right,
I mean,
that's true.
It's just like an add-on. But you start jumping on to like Apple Plus, Apple. I doubt Disney or HBO gets in on the live streaming or anything like that. But like, some of the, Peacock, Paramount, you're overloading the system. Yeah, old folks still use cable. No, you're 100% right, and that's going to be a problem for for at least the future. Next 10 years, you're still going to have people wanting to watch their teams. So, yeah.
That was the neat thing about the Big Ten is that they got on networks that are all over the air. So you could still pick them up with an antenna. I think people forget that stuff,
Yeah.
That's a huge benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So Doc Sadler is living in a van down by the river.
Eating his Wendy's chili.
I don't know if you guys saw the article. Where was it, Patrick? You guys?
A few of them. The Journal-Star had it. Paper down in Oklahoma had it. I mean, he's got a van next to the stadium, next to the arena down there, playing assistant coach. Guy can't quit. 45 years into it.
Man,
he's a trip, man. I miss that guy.
Doc Sadler's a really cool guy.
He is. He's awesome. I love that guy.
And I imagine, I mean, he's probably got training table there. He's got he has all the facilities. I looked at that article and thought, would somebody do that for me as the years increase? That's what they could do in Lincoln, Nebraska, is they could take the old Memorial Stadium stomping grounds and turn it into like a, retirement for people that are invalid area for like me. And then just help them.
Quit pissing off your kids. You don't have to worry about it.
Oh God, come on! I raised my kids to live in a sick, dark world. They're going to turn around and go, "No, we'll take care of Mom." You always talked about going out to San Diego and living in the park. It's about time you lived up to your side of the bargain, Dad.
Get a boat slip in San Diego. Get a little dinghy. Live off that to rest your years.
Okay, Greg, do we have anything else?
I don't believe so, John.
Is there anything else going on in the world?
I don't believe so, John.
Oh, okay.
We're still in the middle of winter. There's not a lot going on right now.
I just want to take this opportunity to express my gratitude for Patrick stepping in tonight and holding down the fort until I was able to get here. And then when I got here, I didn't have a whole lot to say, so it's been great.
Are we going to start movie reviews sometime?
Oh, sure. I saw last Friday, I saw Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania. I don't know if that's the kind of movie. It was fine.
It was fine.
It was fine.
I feel like that's how a lot of Marvel movies have just become. They're fine.
They have lost a step, dare I say.
You know what? They're all like, oh, here's a new introducing the next villain hero guy. We can't kill him, kind of thing, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're introducing more characters. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oscar preview next week, Aaron Rostofsky says.
Rostovsky?
Wait, isn't he one of ours?
Yeah,
he is.
What? It's a hard name to pronounce. Look at that thing. How the hell did he ever get around with that? As a kid, I bet he was abused a lot. Anyway, Oscar preview next week. You'd have to look at Oscar movies. I don't even know what they are. Other than that, what is that one? The Banshees, Shinin.
Really good film.
What?
Yeah, it's good.
What is it called?
Colin Farrell and what's his name? It's good.
I'm undecided on that. I thought it was very slow. It's a very good story. The acting is exceptional, and the writing is exceptional. I mean, you literally have to see that. You watch that whole movie for that just one scene where he goes, well, there goes that dream. And That guy should win an Oscar for that role. I'll give you that. That guy should.
The kid.
Yeah.
We asked the sister out. Yeah,
Yeah.
He was really good.
Yeah.
He really did a good job.
With all the mannerisms and all the stuff that went into that. One of the best acting jobs.
Speaking of streaming services, if you have no idea what they're talking about, The Banshees of Inisherin is available on HBO Max.
I think that's where we watched it.
Okay, well, I didn't know about it, so I've primarily been using HBO Max the last few weeks for Sesame Street for the twins. So I need to flip over to the not child profile.
I will. If you guys HBO Max sports related, I'll bring us back to sports. If you guys are a fan of Bomani Jones, check out his show on it.
Really?
He's good.
He was with us for a short time.
Bomani Jones?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Before ESPN. Not Corn Nation,
but
SB
SB,
Nation.
God.
SB Nation.
I'm like, how the hell did we get Bomani Jones?
I think he was just what?
He was with S Nation?
Yeah. Very intelligent, very witty.
Intelligent. That's why I love his show.
Yeah.
Watch it. Seriously, if you are fans of Bomani Jones, check out. He's got a sports show. He is so good. Yeah, I've been a longtime fan of his. He's a good writer. His podcast has been great. But yeah, check out.
There was a short time, I think, where SB Nation was doing like. Were they doing videos? They were doing like shows with video, if I remember right. And Bomani Jones was part of that. They were probably 5 years ahead of their time, and then I think they just, now we just kind of are not really doing a lot of stuff. I guess I don't know.
We probably really shouldn't talk too much about that.
We probably shouldn't.
Fox Media, we're minding our P's and Q's.
see here, Joel Tilson says onside kick for Best Picture. Is there a movie called Onside Kick, or is that move from the Northwestern game? I don't know what the movies are.
It's the play. The box play. Because Roger Moore also said the Murdoch trial for Best Picture.
Okay.
All right.
So they're just pulling things from the headlines now. So that's how we know it's time to go, ladies and gentlemen, or at least based on the comment section tonight, gentlemen and gentlemen. So again, a big thank you to Patrick for joining us this week and sharing his knowledge about the ACC, about Nebraska ball, and all things in between, the stadium relations, and it's just good to catch up. Next time you're on, Patrick, we'll go way off script and we'll talk about Letterkenny.
Oh yeah, we will. And Shorzy.
And Shorzy, which is
Roger Moore says.
Definitely Shorzy.
Roger Moore says A Day in the Life of a Golf Simulator, best documentary.
Is that an actual thing?
I think there's a hidden meaning behind that. I'm just going to leave it alone.
Okay. So for Patrick Earhart and John Dam Johnston, our founder and fearless leader, I'm Greg Mahochko. This is the 5 Heart Podcast, where we remind you each and every week that 5 Heart is all the heart you need. John?
Go Big Red.
Patrick?
Dan Falter lives.
And good night.
What?
Are you going to leave that on an open-ended
question? Are you going to hit the in-stream room with